advice to parents: get your kids out of these stinking schools that can't teach your kids that 2 plus 2 is 4. If they can't agree to that, then get your kid out of the school. And frankly, I've come to the conclusion that the only solution to this is excuse me, the only solution to this is school choice.
Hey everybody, Alex Newman here. This is Conversations That Matter. We are so glad you've decided to join us. We have a very special guest for you today. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know Dr. Everett Piper. He became kind of a national sensation when he essentially told the students that needed safe spaces and stuff to grow up. He wrote the incredibly popular national bestseller. It is not a daycare. Hugely important book. It's called Not a Daycare: The Devastating Consequences of Abandoning Truth. That was when he was serving as president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University. It's where he kind of got the understanding of what was going on. And mind you, this is a Christian university, and yet the same nonsense had infiltrated there. More recently, he has another book out that we'll talk about some today. Grow Up. Life isn't safe, but it's good. Dr. Piper, thank you so much for being with us. And I want to start with your new book, Grow Up. Life isn't safe, but it's good. Why did you write it? What's the purpose of it, and who is it that really needs to be doing the growing up?
Well, Alex, thank you for having me on the show. And I need to apologize first and foremost for my attire. I just came in off of working with some horses on the farm, and I'm giving the Copan truck stop in Copan, Oklahoma, some free airtime on your show. So you're very gracious to allow me to do that. To answer your question, Grow Up, Life Isn't Safe, but It's Good is essentially the sequel to Not a Daycare. When I would describe it this way: in Not a Daycare, I was whining about the problem and I was warning of the snowflake rebellion and cancel culture. And I said over and over again, these students are going to graduate. They're going to take their whining, their complaining, their narcissism, their selfish focus. They're going to take it from Berkeley and Brown and they're going to take it into the boardroom of corporations across the nation. And they're going to start canceling you and canceling me because they won't like what we say. And now I stand before you today and I say, I told you so. I told you so in Not a Daycare. So, Grow Up, Life Isn't Safe, but It's Good is the sequel to Not a Daycare. Whereas Daycare, I was saying it's coming. And now in Grow Up, it's actually a book of 20 principles, a Jordan Peterson esque type book, if you will, of 20 principles of what to do about it, how to function like a mature adult in this infantilized world of participation trophies and teddy bears, coloring books, and this desire to be safe all the time.
Yeah, phenomenal. And I can't wait to get into some discussion on how we do get these people to grow up. But let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the problem. How did America's youth get so infantilized? How did they get so snowflakey? Is this part of a deliberate agenda, or was it just kind of a accident of history that we went from being this incredibly tough people, pioneers, settled this rugged landscape, rugged individuals, to needing to go play with Play-Doh if somebody commits a microaggression against us? How did we get here?
Well, my industry is responsible for this. The ivory tower, education, is directly responsible for the mess that we find ourselves in today. We can't wash our hands of this. Some educators get angry with me when I say what I just said. Like, how dare you challenge the educational establishment and say that this is somehow our fault? Well, who has more contact with the kid's heart, mind, and soul on a daily basis than anyone else in our culture? It's not the pastor, it's not the priest, it's not Sunday school, it's not church, and frankly, it's not even the parent. The entity that has more contact with a growing young person in our culture is the school. So we can't wash our hands of this problem and say, well, everything we did for those hours and hours upon each day that we had these kids under our charge didn't make any difference. Well, of course it made a difference. Of course, we've trained up these kids in the way they should go. And unfortunately, when they're old, they're not departing from it because what we taught them in our schools was garbage. So, like your grandmother said, garbage in, garbage out. So, how did we get here? Our schools are responsible for teaching bad ideas. Like Richard Weaver warned us in his seminal work in 1948, ideas have consequences. And what was his point? Ideas have consequences. If you teach good ideas, you're going to get good culture, good kids, good government, good community, good church, good just goodness overall. You're going to get people that understand goodness versus safety. But if you teach bad ideas, you're going to get the opposite. So my answer to your question is my industry, education, created this problem. We created these little Frankensteins, and now they're turning around to bite us.
I mean, does this begin in K through 12? How does what happens in K through 12 prepare the way for then higher learning, the colleges and the universities of America to kind of supercharge that?
Well, yes, it begins at the earliest age. At the moment the kid, your son, your daughter, our progeny, starts thinking, the moment they start thinking, I would argue you have three entities within culture that are responsible for molding that kid's mind and soul. And those three entities would be the parent, the pastor, and the teacher. And it's arguable that all three entities have dropped the ball. We've got helicopter parenting. How's that working for us? We have pastors that are more interested in being woke than they are right. And then we have teachers that are embracing critical theory rather than teaching 2 + 2 = 4. They're arguing that that's a product of white privilege. This is not a recipe for raising mature, thoughtful adults.
Well, do you think this was orchestrated? Was there a deliberate plan to bring this in? Was it an accident of history that it ended up taking place? And what is the origin? Were there any particular individuals in academia, any institutions that were crucial in moving us along this path?
You could go back to John Dewey and the deconstructive model of education, where education became more about socialization and emotional learning than it was about the objective facts of mathematics, of biology. Uh, I gave a presentation at the Oklahoma Council for Public Affairs recently, and then I did a similar presentation at OCPAC, the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, and I basically said this: when it comes to education, I have some very simple requests of you. Just teach my kids how to count. That's all I want. Teach them that 2 + 2 = 4. Teach them that biology is real, that a female is a fact, not a fabrication. Teach them that the Constitution is a good thing. Let's just start there. Maybe teach them that the Bill of Rights is a seminal document that gave us more individual and human liberty and freedom than any other document in human history. If you just stop there and teach them nothing else, I'm happy. Stop the nonsense. Stop the deconstruction of John Dewey. Stop the critical theory. Stop the 1619 Project. Stop talking about our kids being nothing but moldable clay, where you're going to deconstruct who they are as human beings and then build them up in some neo Marxist model of what you want in your vision of what a utopia would be, where they don't have any freedom any longer, but you're just going to keep them safe. And isn't that the message of our time? Hasn't COVID exposed the bankruptcy of heart, mind, and soul in our schools and in our culture?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so what is the end destination? If we continue allowing our children to be trained up in this way, if we continue to allow this so-called educational model to prevail across the United States, where do we end up as a nation, as a people? Where do our families end up? Where do our individual children end up? What happens to our economy? I mean, where are we headed?
Bondage, slavery.
Hmm.
I, I said over and over again when I was the president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University, I delivered many a commencement address, and I never once gave out degrees and opinions. I never did that. I never patted anybody on the back and said, "Congratulations, here's your diploma where you majored in opinions." That would be absurd. And the reason I'm saying that right now to you in answer to this question is this: Pol Pot and Mao and Robespierre and Chavez and Mussolini and Hitler, all the despots of history, had opinions, and it didn't end well. Jesus told us, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Truth is a recipe for freedom. Opinions always lead to bondage and slavery. And what we have right now in education, in our culture, is the elevation of opinions. If it's my opinion that I'm a female, then I'm forcing everybody to bow at the altar of this neo Gnosticism and agree that I'm something I'm not. They have to imbibe the lie. They have to enable me to be delusional. And if they don't, I demand that they be silenced because they make me feel unsafe. This is lunacy. This is crazy. This is bondage and slavery because I enslave myself to my own delusions and I then enslave you into somehow enabling me and agreeing with me in that delusional state of mind. That is not a recipe for human liberty, human dignity, or human freedom because it dumbs down the definition of what it means to be a human being to nothing but my inclinations and my habits and my appetites and my libido. As a Christian, I'm going to raise the banner and say, I'm defined by my Lord, not my libido. There are lots of that I might want to do that I can choose not to do because I'm a human being. And hopefully, our schools would be teaching that common sense rather than the stuff that makes no sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to get some into solutions now. What do we do as parents to protect our children from this? What do we do as voters to try to protect our society from this? What should pastors be doing? Or what should they be telling their congregations, if anything, about where we're headed and how we hit the emergency brake before we ride right over the cliff?
Well, advice to parents: get your kids out of these stinking schools that can't teach your kids that 2 plus 2 is 4. If they can't agree to that, then get your kid out of the school. And frankly, I've come to the conclusion that the only solution to this excuse me, the only solution to this is school choice. If we don't get legitimate school choice where you can take your kids out of schools that are teaching bad ideas and put them into schools that teach good ideas and have your money go with you, our culture is lost. What should the parents do? Get your kids out of the school. What should the pastor do? The pastor should start preaching the truth rather than what's politically correct, woke, and socially acceptable. If I hear anything else about an emergent church, I'm going to choke. If I hear one more word about an affirming church, I'm going to just scream. I don't go to church to be affirmed. I go to church to confess. I want to hear what's true. I don't want you to make me feel good. A good sermon's supposed to make me feel guilty. That's the point, because the point is my confession and my repentance and revival. It's to turn around 180 degrees and go a different direction. It's not for you to make me feel good about my sin.
And for the young people, Dr. Piper, I mean, you've gone through 12 years of this indoctrination, then you went to college and they taught you that whatever you feel is correct and you just have to be tolerant of anything and you don't want to commit a microaggression. What do you say to a young person who's just bought into this and it's now just a key part of their worldview? Any advice for a confused young person?
Yeah. The title of my book: Grow Up. Grow Up. When I fell off the horse, again, I'm on the farm right now. I was working horses this morning. When I fall off a horse, my dad told me something: get back on. All right. Grow up. Life isn't easy. It's not safe. Get back on the horse. The best coach I ever had made it very clear he wasn't my friend, that he was my coach. And he kicked me in the tail and he told me that this sport isn't supposed to be safe. No pain, no gain. Get out there and work. So, the point of my book is to encourage what C.S. Lewis tells us about the great lion Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia. What does he say of Aslan? The Christ figure. Aslan, Jesus himself, is not safe, but he's good. There's a huge difference between safety and goodness. Freedom is good. Freedom is a good thing. But Jesus himself is not safe. He makes us free so that we can choose his goodness rather than feeling comfortable and coddled in our own self righteousness and sin.
Amen. And Dr. Piper, what's the best place to get your book or both of your books? Do you encourage people to get them through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, direct from your website? How do you recommend people do that?
Any online bookstore, you can get them there, or you can go to my website, which is dreverettpiper.com. That's drevettpiper.com. On that website, you'll see that I write weekly for the Washington Times. I'm a weekend columnist for them. I also have my daily radio show and podcast called The Rebellion, which is a half-hour talk radio show that is uploaded to podcast Monday through Friday. The Rebellion, but you can access all that, the books, my columns, as well as The Rebellion at drevettpiper.com.
Very good. Well, Dr. Piper, thank you so much for speaking out. Thank you for sharing your insight with us. We really appreciate it. Folks, go to drevettpiper.com. Check out the books. The new one is Grow Up. Life Isn't Safe, but It's Good. If you have any young people in your life that need a kick in the behind and getting them going, that may be a good stocking stuffer for Christmas. Thank you guys again for watching. I'm Alex Newman. This is Conversations That Matter, and we'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Thanks, and God bless.